famous iconic French things that aren't entirely French. If someone were asked to make a sketch of the stereotypical Frenchman, the strokes of the pencil would undoubtedly outline someone sporting a mustache with a gitane or Gauloise dangling from the corner of his mouth. The subject would be riding a bicycle with a baguette and maybe a croissant in a straw basket attached to the two-wheeler. There may be an accordion and a painting easel somewhere in the drawing, and certainly a little French poodle at the Frenchie's side. But just how many of the features of our imaginary portrait are native to France? And how many were imported? As this list will illustrate, many things you may associate with France did not, in fact, originate there. First one, the mustache. Not surprisingly, the mustache is an import. A cave painting dated to 300 BC and portraying a Scythian warrior with a carefully groomed mustache is often cited as the first evidence of the fashion. However, much older Egyptian artifacts, dating from as early as 2650 BC, show Clark Gable-like wisps gracing the upper lips of men painted on pottery and other vessels. The mustache had a good run of it in Egypt until 1800 BC, when the ruling pharaoh banned the sprouting of hair above the lips of his subjects. From that time on and up until the 20th century, facial hair became the target of many governmental decrees and laws. It is hard to track those specific to mustaches. However, since whiskers above the lip were often lumped in with those on the chin, if for no other reason than a lack of vocabulary. The Romans, for example, were certainly familiar with the existence of the mustache, but no Latin word for it existed. Not surprisingly, the mustache is an import. A cave painting dated to 300 BC and portraying a Scythian warrior with a carefully groomed mustache is often cited as the first evidence of the fashion. However, much older Egyptian artifacts, dating from as early as 2650 BC, show Clark Gable-like wisps gracing the upper lips of men painted on pottery and other vessels. The mustache had a good run of it in Egypt until 1800 BC, when the ruling pharaoh banned the sprouting of hair above the lips of his subjects. From that time on and up until the 20th century, facial hair became the target of many governmental decrees and laws. It is hard to track those specific to mustaches. However, since whiskers above the lip were often lumped in with those on the chin, if for no other reason than a lack of vocabulary. The Romans, for example, were certainly familiar with the existence of the mustache, but no Latin word for it existed. In ancient Greece, on the other hand, where barbers were important members of society as early as the 6th century BC, 3 different words existed for the fuzzy upper lip, including mustax, which the Italians borrowed in the Middle Ages to come up with their own mustacchio. This word, in turn, was borrowed by the French, likely during the 15th century, when King Charles VI was busy campaigning in southern Italy. Mustache cultivation, however, was important in France and all across Western Europe long before there were words to describe it. Throughout the Middle Ages, barbering was a serious undertaking. In addition to trimming hair, beards, and mustaches, barbers were performing other healthcare-related functions such as bloodletting and tooth extraction. Number 2, the croissant. If the baguette does get protection as a world treasure, then so might its cousin, the croissant. Like the baguette, the origins of the croissant are nebulous, but most stories point back to Vienna and August Zang. In 1683, Vienna was under attack by the Ottoman Empire. In the wee hours of the morning, as Ottoman warriors were preparing to sneak upon the city and destroy it, several bakers who had roused themselves from bed to prepare the day's bread caught wind of the enemy's presence and sounded the alarm, saving the city. As a reward for their heroic deed, Viennese bakers were granted the privilege of baking a special roll in the shape of a crescent, the symbol of the Ottoman Empire. These kipferl had the vague appearance of a croissant, but the dough was very different. The pate foulet that makes a croissant was not invented until the 17th century. So the cakes in a crescent shape that were served by the Bishop of Paris at Catherine de' Medici's coronation ceremony in 1549 were decidedly not croissants. What August Zang brought with him to Paris in 1838 was the dough and the method. In Vienna, Zang had been a young artillery officer in the Austrian army with a promising career and an even bigger ambition. Some say that during a visit to the French capital, he was surprised by the lack of pastries. Others relate a visit by the French royal family to Vienna, during which one member commented on how well Viennese breads would be received in Paris. According to this story, Zang resigned from his army position the very next day, packed his bags, and left for the City of Lights, recipes in hand. The French did not lose a second in adopting the croissant and making it their own. By 1840, at least a dozen bakeries selling viennoiserie were thriving in the French capital. Number 3, French fries. That's right, French fries, or freedom fries, or whatever you might like to call them, are not French. They're Belgian, native to Chile and Peru. The potato traveled to Europe by way of the Canary Islands. By the end of the 16th century, Spanish farmers, they were exporting them to Europe, but they were viewed with great suspicion in France. At best, they were thought fit for animal feed. It wasn't until 1772 when Antoine Parmentier, a respected army pharmacist, declared the potato fit for human consumption that the tuber stood even the slightest chance of one day becoming a fry in that country. To the north, common people in Belgium living along the Meuse were accustomed to frying the small fish they caught in the river. They would slice them into strips and fry them up for snacks. In the winter, when the river froze and there was often no catch to fry, villagers in Namur, Dinant, and other river towns began slicing potatoes and frying them instead. By the late 17th century, the Belgian fry was a thing. Thomas Jefferson, the U.S. minister to France from 1784 to 1789, introduced the fry to America, but he did not call it the French fry. The fry only became French after World War I, when American soldiers stationed in Belgium brought it home with them. Since French is spoken in Belgium along the Meuse River, they called the fry French for the language, not the country. And how do Belgians, who consume more of them than any other nation in the world, feel about French fries? There's no such thing as French fries. Number 4, the accordion. It's invented in Berlin by Friedrich Buschmann in 1822. The accordion was first known as the Hondeolin. In 1829, a Viennese musician, Cyrillus Damian, added buttons so that the left hand played the chords while the right hand. He renamed the instrument the accordion, borrowing the French word for chord. From Germany and Austria, the accordion migrated to Italy. Then, in the late 19th century, Italian immigrants brought it with them to France. The instrument was so enthusiastically adopted by the general population that accordion shops were set up in Paris before the turn of the century, the first one opening in 1890. The accordion quickly became the musical centerpiece in cafes and cabarets. It was perfectly adapted to the music of the popular balls that were held in the streets of Paris during the first decades of the 20th century. It was also perfectly adapted to the French national psyche. The accordion has been described as instantly recognizable, with its minor keys that speak of an underlying sadness, coupled with jaunty melodies and playing styles that reveal the resilience of the human spirit. Perhaps no one did more to Frenchify the accordion than Edith Piaf. Born in Paris into a family of circus performers, Edith Gashin's father was an acrobat, her mother was a singer and dancer, and her grandmother was a flea trainer. By the age of 14, she was performing on the streets of the capital and was soon fondly called Môme Piaf, or Little Sparrow. With an accordion in hand, she assumed the name and rose from rags to riches. The first French artist to conquer the American music market and France's biggest international star during the first half of the 20th century. The melancholy and resilience of her music is echoed in her instrument of choice. Number 5, the bicycle. Just when the bicycle became the bicycle is open to debate. It is true that in 1861, Pierre Michaud had the brilliant idea of adding pedals to a two-wheeled, human-powered vehicle that had made its way to Paris. But that two-wheeled vehicle was the German Draisen. The Draisienne, or velocipede, as it was known in France, was designed by Karl Dreis von Sauerbahn, a German inventor and forestry official who apparently preferred inventing to overseeing the state of the forest paths. Making his rounds on the Draisienne was much quicker than on foot and gave him more time to tinker in his laboratory. Dreis's first human-powered, wheeled vehicle was called the Laufmaschine running machine. Appearing in 1814, it was heavy and cumbersome, boasting 4 large wooden wheels and a steering mechanism. In 1815, he simplified his invention, abandoning 2 of the wheels, making the other 2 out of iron, and adding a rope brake. To be fair, Comte Médée de Servax, a French nobleman, had invented the Cellarifere, a 2-wheeled vehicle in the form of a horse, in 1791. But it had no steering, pedals, or brakes. According to Merriam-Webster, neither Médée de Servax nor Dreis's invention qualifies as a true bicycle, which it defines as follows. A vehicle with two wheels tandem, handlebars for steering, a saddle seat, and pedals by which it is propelled. Even if pedals really are the deal maker, though, the bicycle still isn't French. Pedals first appeared on the dandy horse or hobby horse, as the vehicle was called in the United Kingdom in 1839, when a Scotsman, Kilpatrick Macmillan, devised a system of levers, cranks, and pedals to propel the vehicle. What iconic French thing surprised you the most? Thank you for watching our video. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel.